If you want to pump your body and expand your mind, there's only one place to go. Mind Pump. Mind Pump with your hosts, Sal DiStefano, Adam Schaefer, and Justin Andrews.
In this episode of Mind Pump, so for the first 38 minutes, we don't talk a whole lot about fitness, but we do have some fun conversation. This is the intro part of the episode. We start out by talking about my son's bulking plan. It's a lot of fun. Having a lot of fun getting him on the bulk. And how I'm using Smoothie Box to help him get quality calories. Now, Smoothie Box delivers to your door high-quality smoothies. They're frozen in packages. You just put them in your blender. It's got collagen, protein, healthy fats, healthy carbs, fruits, vegetables, and they're delicious. They are one of our sponsors. If you go to smoothieBox.com/mindpump, smoothie is spelled SMOOTHIEBOX, smoothieBox.com/mindpump, you will get $20 off your first 3 boxes.
Yeah.
Then we talked about Organifi's red juice and how Justin's friend is now using it for his pre-workout.
Yeah, he loves it.
Giving him the energy. Organifi is also one of our sponsors. If you go to Organifi.com/mindpump and use the code mindpump, you'll get 20% off. Then we talked about beetroot powder for nitric oxide production. Nitric oxide dilates your blood vessels, increases blood flow, improves your endurance. Good conversation in that part of the episode. Then we mentioned the new Gillette ad that's causing a lot of hubbub, right? What do they talk about? Toxic masculinity? Kind of crazy.
Yeah,
and then
we got into it in there.
And then we talk about how politicians like to divide us so they can conquer. Then we get into the fitness part of the episode. The first question was, this person's a competitor. They're already on low calories, and they're already doing a lot of cardio, but they want to burn more body fat. What should they do? Should they increase their cardio even more or cut their calories even more? Which option is better to preserve muscle while getting shredded? The next question was, is fiber the most underappreciated macronutrient, or is it the least important? Should it even be considered a macronutrient? Great discussion in that part of this episode. And the next question, we've all trained people for a long time, and a lot of the people that we've trained were very successful, smart individuals. What is some of the most impactful advice that we've ever gotten from some of these people that has helped us in regards to personal growth? And the final question, what's the worst piece of advice a fellow podcaster has given us about our business? We had a lot of fun on that part of the episode.
Oh, we love all you guys.
Good times.
Yeah.
Also, this month, our flagship foundational workout program, MAPS Anabolic, which is excellent for metabolism boosting, muscle building, and strength building, is 50% off. All you got to do is go to mapsfitnessproducts.com, use the code RED50, RED50 without a space, for that discount of 50% off. Also, a new version will be released soon this month. If you already have it, or if you're getting it with the 50% off, you will be updated automatically when the new version comes out. Also, all of our other MAPS programs are on that site as well. We have MAPS programs for competitors, for sports enthusiasts, for athletes. We have programs for strongmen type competitors or people who like to work out like strongmen, correctional exercise programs, all of them. They're all available at mapsfitnessproducts.com.
Dude, so I've seen you post a few times, and I heard you talking about it yesterday. Your boy, is he getting serious about the bulk and getting? You said he brought that up.
I'm trying. So what I'm trying not to do is be super insane about it with him and get too excited. Because
Right. You want him to enjoy the process.
Yeah, I want him to feel like a lot of it is his idea, and I want him to feel like it's something he wants to do, because you know how easy it is. I don't know if you guys ever had the experience as a kid where because your dad or someone made you do something so much that it made you not want to do it.
That or you do it and then you resent them later.
Yeah,
right?
I have a buddy who his dad was like a very, very good soccer player when he was when his dad was younger. So his dad pushed him to play soccer so much that he ended up not liking it and stopped playing. Mm-hmm. And then as an adult later on in his mid-30s, he's like, damn, I wish I stayed in it, but my dad pushing me so hard made me not want to do it.
So do you, because you are so passionate about training, do you have to do you find yourself like holding back and being like, oh, I gotta be careful not to get too excited about?
Yeah, like we have conversations. I wait for him to ask me questions, and he's got my natural genetics, so he's naturally a skinny kid, right? And so he's asking me about that, and like, were you like my size growing up? And we're going back and forth. And I said, well, I remember when I was, and he was asking me about my weight training routine, when I first started. And I said, well, I remember when I was, I think 14, over a summer, I went on this like mass gaining bulk protocol. And he's like, what'd that look like? I'm like, well, I would eat more food. I was trying to eat more good, healthy food. I did a lot of things wrong, which is, good for you now, because as somebody who's experienced, I know what I did wrong. But I was, I would lift weights, and I said once I figured things out, I actually gained a decent amount of weight. And he's like, oh, he goes, can I go on a bulking protocol? And a tear,
boy.
Single tear.
a tear rolled down my, you know what I'm saying?
Trickled down.
I was like, I get to do this all over again?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
With
saying?
way more knowledge.
Yeah, see, oh my God, I wish I had me.
You want a bulk?
Yeah, when I was a kid. So, what's happening now is, in the morning, he'll wake up for school or whatever.
So are you diving into nutrition with him right now?
Yeah, so
cool.
so in the morning he'll wake up and I'll give him a breakfast and he'll be like, "Is this a bulking breakfast?"
Is this a bulk?
Yeah, so he'll say shit like that. So
Yeah.
And right now I'm only training him like twice a week maybe, and I'm waiting for him to kind of bring it up. So it's not super consistent, although it's getting more consistent. So I think it's working. It's working perfectly. And then he would ask me like, should I take supplements? And I said, I don't think you need to take supplements. I said, however, a good way to get quality calories in your body sometimes is to use a blender. And so he's asking me about this. I said, you have a fast metabolism like I did. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, okay? The kid can eat 1,500 to 2,000 calories worth of food. If we go to the mall and we'll get something from Chipotle or something from a burger place or whatever, the kid will eat and it reminds me like myself, an insane amount. So he's like, God, he goes, I already eat a lot. He goes, I eat a lot of food.
He's ready to grow.
Yeah. And I said, you do. I said, but you have to do it more consistently. And I said, an easy way to get more quality calories. And this is just a message for hard gainers that are out there. So that this really applies. And there's, by the way, hard gainers aren't as common, I think, as people think, but they do exist. I was one. I know, Adam, you know exactly what that's like. You're like a fucking bottomless pit. You eat and you lift and your body just burns it off.
We've shared stories about, I mean, I remember many, many times sitting down and eating like 2 giant like turkey sandwiches and a massive protein gainer shake. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then I remember just like biting and then washing it down with the shake and biting and washing. I mean, I remember so many meals like that and feeling like I could gain weight if my life.
And then you go weigh yourself on the scale, and it's like,
it's like
half a pound. Then you go to the bathroom, it's like gone. You're like, ah.
Yeah.
So I said one of the things you can do is you could use a blender, because it's easier to consume high quality calories that way. So he says, well, what should I do? Should I just get those like what about all these shakes and stuff? I said, well, some of them are better than others. And so thankfully now we're working with Smoothie Box, which I wish I had Smoothie Box when I was a kid, because here is a shake that you can essentially a shake, right? It's a smoothie that you can make. But if you look at the ingredients, it's food.
Yeah.
So it's like spinach, avocado, pumpkin seeds, there's cacao nibs or mandarin pieces or banana,
sweet potato,
yeah,
sneak it all in there. It's really, really good. I love how they match like the orange kind of phytonutrients together for the clementine specifically, or it's really smart the way they put it together.
It's real. It's like real food.
Yeah.
It's real food, and it's not super high calorie. It's like 300 something calories for a shake. So for people who just want to have a breakfast and have a healthy breakfast, it's a good one. But for my kid, especially if he's already eating a lot and he wants more food, and I want to give him quality food, I blend that up for him. So I blend it up and I mix it with. Now they say
there's that collagen protein in there.
Yeah, it's got collagen protein, and Smoothie Box recommends that you use like coconut milk or almond milk. But with him, I use regular whole milk.
I was going to say, put some whole milk in there, bump the calories.
Exactly. So I buy this really good organic grass-fed milk, and it's non-homogenized, so it's just really good quality. So I put it in the blender. I add that in there. I put about 1.5 cups of that in there, plus the Smoothie Box, plus the collagen protein, which is a good, healthy source of protein for anybody. Blend it up, and then he has it, and he feels cool because now he gets to have like this.
Shake next to
Yeah, you know, because I remember what that's like too. Like you feel like you're having a magic potion.
Is there? I know you're probably like waiting on this, but is there any bit of you that's like, I kind of want him to go through a little bit of a rite of passage, like the raw eggs, you know, and like watching Rocky. I just could see that.
You know, it's funny. I think about stuff like that, like the stuff that I would do, and I think of it fondly, but I also realize the fucking dysfunction.
Like horrible.
Yeah. So like I better
horrible
not.
experience.
Yeah, like sit there, you know, with him over the sink. You better pound those raw eggs, boy. You want to put that
Drink
mass
it,
on
now
or
go
not?
for a run. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm cool with that. So, but anyway, it's fun because you know, now we have this quality things that I can provide to him, because when I was a kid, it was Gainer's Fuel, you know, 2000 or Mega Mass 5000. It was maltodextrin and
you literally
shit.
just shit it out like an hour later.
Silomax.
An hour later, it's just coming right out of you.
Oh, dude, I used to blend. I bought, and back in the day, the way they'd get you to buy their Gainer shakes was just a bigger number. So it's, it would start off with, it'd be like heavyweight Gainer. I remember the first Gainers.
900.
Like, 900 was the number.
Yeah.
And then it got to 1500, and then it was 2000, and then
starts in the cylinder, and then it becomes a tub, then it becomes this huge fucking bag.
Yes.
It's like a dog food bag now.
Yes.
Then it's like a sandbox,
Dude.
you know, a big old.
Weeder made one that was called Mega Mass 4000, which at the time had the highest calorie count.
Yeah.
And you'd buy this thing, and it was, and I looked this up. You go on Google and look this up. It was a bucket. Like a paint bucket.
Like a legit bucket
Like
size.
yes, like my dad saved it afterward and would put like nails and shit in it like, for work. I'm serious. It was a bucket. It was massive.
It's handy.
And then in the bucket, you break open the lid, and there'd be not a scoop.
You know, it's like a cup. Yeah. Which, you know, the irony in all of this is like that.
It just made you bigger serving size.
That was like you could just take 4 scoops of the regular shit.
Yes.
Yeah, there it is.
So I would take this big scoop, and you were supposed to use 4 scoops of it with, like, I don't remember how much it was, like 20 ounces of whole milk, which is where you get a lot of the calories. Yeah. And then you blend it, and the blender would do this. You turn the blender off, and it'd go, and you would just see like a small spiral in the middle, because the whole thing was
thick.
thick.
And it's like a thick milkshake.
It's like you made cement.
It takes you an hour to drink it.
And I'd sit over the sink, and this is how I developed my like skills to like pound food. As I'd sit there with this shaker, this big old blender, and just swallow it and sit there.
Yeah, and we wonder why we're all intolerant to milk.
Dude.
What? Weird. How'd that happen?
And then you know what I used to do? I swear to God, this is a true story. I would sit in my dad's Lazy Boy after I'd pound it, and I'd lay back. I'd put the legs up, and I'd lay back, and I'd lay there for a good 20 minutes to try not to throw up. So I'd sit,
yeah, I remember that in class, like just the bubble guts going, and like you're just trying to ride it out. You know, the worst part is it was so audible. You know, you'd sit there and there'd be a quiet moment where the teacher would stop talking. But
I got to tell this story again. I told this story a long time ago in our early episodes, so a lot of our listeners haven't heard this. I had bought at the time, advertising. All the bodybuilding magazines were basically huge brochures for supplements. That's all they were. You'd go through them, and there'd be a few articles, and there'd be like 15 pages of ads. And one of the ads was for a supplement, a powder called Heavyweight Gainer 900. I think it was Heavyweight Gainer 900 was the name of it. And it said on it that it was like breakthrough protein matrix and special fats. This is the first time I ever heard of MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, that help you burn fat rather than store it. It was a lean gainer. You're just going to gain muscle mass. And the ad was really convincing. So I bought this stuff, and it gave me diarrhea every time, like every single time. But I thought, I was so sold on it, right?
Yeah.
So we were going to the pool one day with my family. I don't know if you guys remember the story. I told you guys a while ago. And I pounded a 900 calorie, and it was strawberry, by the way, it tasted nothing like strawberry. It was just it was pink.
Pink
it was strawberry colored. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And I pounded the shake, and then we go swimming. So we're out there, and I don't know, I think I'm 14 or 15 years old, and we're swimming in the pool, hanging out, and then it hits me. I'm like, oh shit.
Oh my God.
I gotta.
Did you shit in the pool?
No.
Oh.
No, dude. I'm like, this is gonna happen. So I freaking get out of the pool, and I run over to the bathroom, but it was single-use bathrooms. So someone's in the bathroom. So I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of cold, a little bit, shaking, which makes it hard to keep everything clenched. And I'm knock on the door, 1 minute, I had to wait
emergency.
I had to wait a good 5 minutes, and during that 5 minutes of waiting, I almost let it out a couple times. So as soon as they open the door, I jam in there, lock the door, turn around, and I'm trying to get my bathing suit off, but because it was wet, the
strings are all tight.
Oh, that's the worst.
The string was all tight, and I pulled the wrong end and made a knot. You know what I'm talking about? When you pull the loop out? Yeah. I can't fucking do it. So finally, it started happening. Like, it just started coming out. So I literally grabbed the bottoms of my shorts, and I pulled them so hard, I ripped them and ripped them down, and just went nuts all over the toilet. Got it on my bathing suit. Got it on the fucking everywhere. And then I'm a 14-year-old. Remember, I'm a 14-year-old kid. I'm in the bathroom now.
Yeah. So what do you do? The aftermath of that?
Oh,
how do you get out of that?
A lot of toilet paper.
I was gonna say you probably rinsed in the sink.
Use the sink.
Yeah.
And I walked out, and I just, I sunbathed.
Shredded ass.
Yeah, and I just sunbathed the rest of the.
Yeah.
I don't want to go in the pool anymore. Fucking terrible. I wish I had smoothie box back then. That was a great way to tie that in.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Really
I have
close that loop.
He's asking me too about if there's anything he should do before he works out to give him energy, and I'm like, no. Although I thought about the red juice, but I don't know if that's appropriate for a kid because of the rhodiola. But it's no stimulant, right?
I actually just gave some to my friend, and every now and then I try really hard not to give my friends advice, like especially like workout fitness advice. I just can't.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
Well, I just don't want to be the guy because they know that I do that for a living, and I want them to want to ask me. It's like,
no, I'm the same way.
It's one of those things where I'm like, I always feel like every time I'm at a family function or I'm hanging out with my friends, I just want to hang out. I don't want to like be the guy that has all the answers for them. But my friend was like, he had been doing a lot of endurance as of late, and so he's all this stuff for conditioning and just wants to move better. But he's realizing like I need to get like more size, and like I want to approach that and actually lift heavier weights and stuff. So I've been helping him with that. But so yeah, I actually had at my house. I hadn't been using the red juice as much as like the green and gold. So I gave him that, and I'm like, here, you can try this for like a pre-workout. It'll give you a good amount of energy. And
he likes it.
He loves it. He came back to me. He's like, dude, this has really helped. Because he used to take like a Monster, or he would drink like one of these like crazy energy crack drinks, and so this has helped to hit. And again, this is the same one I think I might have mentioned a while back that just adding in some, like, even if it's a powdered form of like a vegetable or fruit is like a huge thing in his diet. So
his body's like, whoa.
Yeah, his body was just like, responding to it and like all energized. And I'm like, yeah. So some people like that have, relied a lot on the artificial stimulants and things like that. I think it would really do well.
Well, Doug brought up the ingredients of the Organifi red juice: pomegranate juice powder, cranberry, blueberry, raspberry, strawberry.
It's that beetroot powder.
Yeah,
beetroot. That's the big one, yeah.
Beetroot, cordyceps, and reishi, which are both, I really love those. Rhodiola, which some people can find stimulating, so I think that's where people get the energy. Yeah, have you guys seen the studies on beetroot powder and beets? Mm-hmm. It's one of the most legit ways to increase nitric oxide and increase endurance. It's actually one of the only ways that is actually supported by studies.
Yeah.
So when you look at like studies of when you see supplements that are like, give you more nitric oxide, better pump, they don't really have anything supporting them. There's very few things that actually have science supporting them. Beetroot powder or beets actually does do that.
Do you know at what dose?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
I mean, I think your best bet is probably, I would think, to eat beets, just to eat actual beets. Oh, well, I hate the taste of them, by the way.
Well, it's always that way, right?
But I wonder if eating beets is what they did in the study, or if it was more of a concentrated version. Like, I wonder if because I forgot what there's something in beets there's a compound in the beets that causes the boosting of the nitric oxide. Yeah. And I wonder if you need to have it in concentrated form.
You don't like beets in your salad?
I hate beets.
Oh, I like it.
Besides fresh beets.
I eat them if they're in there, but yeah,
it
doesn't excite me.
I don't like how people serve them for Thanksgiving, like just kind of straight, I like to have them like shredded in my salad. I think they're really good in salad.
You ever had like a chocolate cake with beets?
No.
Mixed in? No. There's actually like a recipe for that. It's weird, but it's good.
Beet cake?
Yeah, beet cake.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's really weird.
That sounds like a hip hop song from the 80s.
Yo, I'm beet cakes.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Bringing you the hot
That's Justin's hip
hot
hop name.
jams. That's my other one. I had another one. I forget what it is now. Yeah. I keep acquiring all these hip hop names.
Hashtag beet
Everybody, put
cakes.
your hands together for Beat Cakes Butterball.
Beet cakes butterball. Hitting the mic.
The mic.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Oh, see, there's a study right there. So it's beetroot juice supplementation on cardiorespiratory endurance in athletes. Yeah, endurance athletes are the ones that are going crazy.
Is that
over
PubMed you just pulled up, Doug?
Yeah.
It looks like.
NCBI, which is a national, what is it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Let me
Yeah.
double check.
It's legit. It's legit. I would.
NCBI.
Yeah, I would.
yeah,
We
that's
should
good.
put that in the show notes. That study was in January of 2017 that they published it. What do the results say in the?
Wow, it's that recent, huh?
It was a big deal in the endurance world. I remember because I kind of read. I like to read things about all athletes just to see if there's any application.
I think that's where I came across it, was in the performance aspects of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the only
endurance.
it's one of the only things you can take that will legit like raise nitric oxide. You know, they said for a long time arginine did that. Not really. Citrulline, better than arginine, but beetroot juice kicks the shit out of all those things in terms of raising nitric oxide.
That's interesting. Now, are most the supplements that are coming out now that are like, the NO claim, are they all have, I would assume with a study like this now out that they would all have beet juice in it or beet powder inside the supplement.
It's becoming a thing now in the muscle building world for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but
because it wasn't before.
No.
Yeah,
No,
it was
not at all.
just straight nitric oxide, which is what I used to always tell people. It's like, we have no studies to show that actually elevates in your system. It's another one of those things where just because you take it doesn't necessarily mean that it elevates it into your system.
Well, the original studies with arginine were intravenous, which that's a big difference.
Yeah.
There's a big difference
shooting
between
it
The
in-
application. Who's doing that?
Yeah,
Right.
and it's got to go through your gut and all that process. So interesting. Have you guys ever had eaten so many beets that you think that your kidneys are bad or something?
Because you poop blood.
Or pee it?
It looks like blood.
No, and
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to take that challenge.
That happened to me when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah, I ate
Wow.
a shit ton of beets and then peed and thought I'm dying. You know what I'm saying?
You still there like that.
Hold on a
though.
second. Don't tell me if you didn't pee red, you wouldn't think some shit happened.
Yeah, I don't know if I had that much. I don't
I
remember.
feel like I ate like a blue Slurpee and then I shit like black or something.
Oh my
It scared me.
God.
Yeah, it scared me real bad.
I had a
that's the charcoal will do that.
Oh, yeah,
activated
that's
charcoal will give you black poops.
charcoal will do that. Which I've had to tell a few people that because we've talked about that for the alcohol hack where you have two when you start drinking 2 before bed and a bunch of water like. The next morning, be ready for your toilet to be like black.
So I fucked with my cousin like that. He was asking me like, what should I do to prevent hangover or whatever? So I told him about activated charcoal. I said, pay attention to a rare side effect where.
Oh God, you did not.
And I said,
Yes, you did.
and so I told him that you'll have like black tarry stool, and it could mean that you have internal bleeding.
Yeah,
such a
with
dick.
lots of parasites.
I got a phone call the next day from him. Dude, I'm fucking done. I'm just kidding.
no.
Such a dick.
It's all good times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyway, so did you guys see that? Everybody's sharing it all over social media. That Gillette ad.
Oh man, is that
wow.
ruffling some feathers right now?
Wow,
I
you
actually,
wanna talk about this?
I actually shared in my story Ben Shapiro's write up on it. I thought of all the things that I've seen on it, I thought the way he wrote about it was best because Justin, before you got here this morning, Justin and I were talking about this.
Yeah.
And and Courtney and him were kind of getting into it a little bit over it, like just kind of from her perspective. And, it's a challenging thing to come out and just straight up challenge. I think our boy over at Ryan over at Order of Man, kind of came after it right away. But it's a sensitive thing to just attack without like explaining. And I thought Shapiro did a really good job.
He did. I fully agree with what he said in the art. It's in Adam's Insta story, and maybe we should post it again so people will put it in the show notes. So
It should. This goes up today, right, Doug? Tomorrow. So it'll be
up there,
Yeah, it should be up. Well, maybe not. Maybe it'll just be coming.
Well,
up. Well, that'll teach you guys.
I
to
like
pay
to
attention my
assess,
story.
like where my first reaction, I have to like check myself on my first reaction because I could get into a train of thought that I'm constantly feeding to where I feel like, masculinity's under attack or like men are under attack or, and just trying to kind of peel back and look how somebody else sees it. And so there was definitely a difference of opinion, looking at the message. If you're looking at it straight and just watching the video, I could see how, like, there's a lot of obvious things that everybody agrees on, like nobody likes to see bullying. Nobody likes to see sexual harassment. Nobody likes these things. I think a little further ahead with, who's providing the message, like where this is affecting society in terms of like polarizing everybody and create like the unintended consequences of a lot of this in terms of how men and women interact. It's very deep, but if you're just watching a video and being like, I could see how somebody would be like, that's a great message.
Well, what these companies do is they try to monetize virtue signaling. And
yes,
companies
that's
have been
what
doing that.
I see immediately.
Yeah, companies have been doing that forever, right? They like Love Your Body campaign for Dove, or we hate men that hit other people. Like, okay, obviously.
Yeah, right.
It is that obvious.
Yeah,
it is.
I hate the term. Here's what I don't like. I don't like the term toxic masculinity. I understand what they're talking about when they say that.
So did they actually say that, or is that in a write-up? Because it wasn't in the video.
No, it wasn't in the video. It was in the write-up. I don't like that term because they're blaming... They're calling it masculinity, and they're saying it's toxic. And, the reality is, if you want to really be accurate... If you look at all of these cases of people, and especially men, who may commit violent crimes, who do things that may be labeled under toxic masculinity, everything from bullying to sexual harassment to, again, like I said, crime, what you'll find is that's most common among these cases is that these were men who did not have a male role model. They didn't have a father. Mm-hmm. And we're now like 2 or 3 generations deep into a society where, in some cases, 3/4 in some societies, 3/4 of the boys or children, but we're just talking about males now, the boys are raised without fathers, and in other cases it's half, or maybe a little less than half. Before that, it was very, very small. So when people say toxic masculinity, the reason why I hate that is because they make it sound like it's too much masculinity, which is actually not true. It's not enough. Right. Masculinity. And when I use the term masculinity, I mean healthy masculinity. And we're lacking. We don't have men are not as involved as they used to be. When you look at just generally, when you look at most divorces, right? Let's just say half of all marriages end in divorce. A good chunk of those, the father really reduces his contact with the children, and most single parents or mothers without the father. And so what we're seeing what's happening is generations of children and boys in particular being raised without dads.
Right.
And that's what you end up getting. And so
that's a massive problem.
And so rather than blaming men, first off, if you ever blame anybody for an action, the only person you can blame is the individual who caused the action, ever.
Right.
So that's number one. But number two, if you ever want to blame something that's happening in society for the rise of something, especially like this, there's been less masculinity, not more. We need more fathers. We need more role models. We need more of that, because the person who I looked to on how to be a man for me was my dad. Mm-hmm. And my dad taught me to be a respectful person, to not harass people, to not be a bully and all that shit. So
right, to elevate women, acknowledge, like it's all those things need to be passed on and modeled. And it's a great point. It needs to, like, that role needs to be filled with a good example of a masculine male role model. And I think that's something like it's being snuffed to where like it's categorized as all masculinity now. We need to just take it all out.
This is why I like the Warren Farrell interview we did. This is one of my favorite interviews this past year that we did. I thought the way that he presented the information was really, really good. And if you're listening right now and you did not listen to the Warren Farrell episode, I think that's an incredible episode along the lines of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I for me. The other thing too is I think we're getting a lot of pushback because it feels like it's open season against men.
Yeah,
men. It feels like we're getting blamed for everything. It's okay to say that men are the problem. It's okay to say that masculinity is a problem. It's okay to say that men are the reason why we have all these issues. We live in this oppressive patriarchy. Blah 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 blah. and it's just not true. It just isn't. Now, there's been oppressive times through society, but it's been oppressive for everybody, not just for women. It's also been oppressive for men. And I don't want to keep a tally, because I could sit here and tally off all the shit that men tend to suffer more than women and all that other shit and vice versa and all that stuff. That's not the point. I think at the end of the day, though, it's collectivizing everybody, not looking at people as individuals, and that's always a problem. It's always been a problem. You know what that's called? It's called sexism. It's called racism. It's called anytime you collectivize any people into a group and give each of those individuals a character, and you say that they all have the characteristics of the group, you run into problems every single time, because I know individual men who are far more feminine than some individual women.
It's
in the
divide and
traditional
conquer,
ways.
man. Divide and conquer.
Yeah, it's silly to me. So, but yeah, Gillette's doing this because they're monetizing their virtue signaling.
That's the.
fine.
And
I
that's
don't know
the
if I don't know if it's a good strategy though. Somebody just sent, literally, because I did that post, the write up that Shapiro did, and someone sent me a meme back, and it's like this guy standing in front of a chessboard, and it says Gillette attacks their one and only demographic. Outstanding move.
It is interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I have a problem because you know that inevitably they're going to get a lot more eyes, a lot more attention. Like this is a strategy you see companies really like taking on now to be able to profit off of, and it's gross to me. If it was part of a charitable,
It's always
side of the function of the company that doesn't get highlighted.
Yeah.
I'm way more supportive of that. And here's the thing: the underlying, of course, the main sort of theme of the video, like stand up to things that you think are wrong. Like I support that 100%.
Yeah.
Like if I see something, I'm gonna fucking say something about it, and I expect people around me to do the same. But there's a lot more to where we're at, in the climate of society, to where like back in the day,
I think with something like this, I think this. Look, I'm not an advertising executive. Okay, so maybe they're right. Maybe this will work for them. I don't think it will, but maybe it will. But it could have been more of a positive thing.
It will. It's just like the Nike move. The Nike move with Kaepernick, same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. No.
Maybe
it's very
because
similar.
No, it worked. It worked brilliantly for them too.
That did work because Nike's demographic was that cartoon you just read or whatever is true.
Yeah.
When you're watching it as a man, it makes you feel like blamed rather than saying, hey man, why don't you do this? Be awesome doing this, or raise your kids or whatever. Men watching that would be like, yeah, rather than being like, hey, here's
now that's a video. Yeah, I would create.
Yeah.
It's like highlight what a good representation is of a man, and let's celebrate that.
Well, playing devil's advocate, you guys would make that, and it wouldn't get shared as much, wouldn't get talked about as much, and so from an advertising perspective, your ad would do not as well.
And see, that's
Maybe.
the gross side that I see immediately.
Yeah,
maybe.
So, I mean,
we'll see what happens to their stock.
yeah.
Anyways.
That's the great thing about the market. You can come out and try shit all you want. People will argue about it and whatever. At the end of the day, we'll know who was right. Whether I may disagree, but at the end of the day, if they sell more shit, then they were right.
the old saying goes, the bad pub is good pub.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're all talking about. I mean, in the last 5 years, when have you ever mentioned Gillette in a conversation ever?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean,
but the unfortunate things, we keep feeding it.
Right.
Yeah.
This is what we see everybody doing now. I'm so sick of this shit.
Is this why you're not shaving anymore, Justin?
Yeah, I was like, ew, weird. Like, yeah, I was like growing a beard, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm just gonna keep going now. Just because.
How does Courtney feel about the beard? I know in the past she doesn't like the sandpaper.
There's like a certain length that
she must really not like it after the Gillette.
Well, that's the thing is like she was just confused at like my initial reaction to the video.
Little standoff in the Andrews house right now.
Yeah, I was, but I was able to kind of have a long form conversation and dress it up to like why there's a lot more to it, and so she actually understands now and like gets it where I'm coming from, and I'm trying to also deconstruct my initial reaction to it and see positive in it as well. So now there needs to be both of that.
I wonder if, because this is what the politics does. This is what the two sides do, and they do this very well, and they play us very well. I get played all the time, and I realize it later.
Yeah.
What if? And here's why they do it. By the way, when they piss you off, they can. It's easier to get someone to vote for you because they hate the other side than it is to get them to vote for you because they like you.
Right.
This politicians and
have known this
money
forever.
have known this forever. Like if I'm sitting here and I'm debating if me and Justin are both politicians and we're trying to get your vote, and Justin is talking about how great he is and all the things he's going to do, and I talk about how shitty he is, how bad he is, how he cheated on this person, how he stole money here or whatever.
Yeah, you're going to win.
Yeah, I'm going to win, and they've known this for a long time. So I wonder if this commercial just comes out, and because the climate has been around masculinity,
Right, totally.
if the conservative side is saying this and saying, hey, everybody, you should be pissed off about this. Now we're all getting pissed off. I wonder if I would have gotten as pissed off if I was just watching TV and he saw the commercial, if it would have enraged me as much.
Exactly.
No, it wouldn't, because Justin made that was the point he was making when we were talking before. He's like, when you listen to the commercial and you actually see it, it's not a big deal. But it's because of what it's done. It's again divided us, and so it's caused all this controversy.
Our
back and forth.
defenses are up.
Right. Well, and it also because people are going on both extremes.
Yeah.
It's caused a line in the sand, and
Exactly.
you have to choose.
Exactly.
And
which
it's
one
unfortunate because even I was watching the video again, and I see most of it. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't really have as much of a problem with as I kept watching it. But there's this one where the guy's he sees a girl he's attracted to. He starts walking towards her, and the guy grabs him right away and pulls him away. No, and I'm like, that is what? Are we gonna cut out all normal interactions of being attracted to the opposite sex? I can't approach a woman and tell her that you look beautiful today.
Yeah,
because I'm scared that it's gonna be interpreted as harassment. That's what you've created because of this.
Yeah, that part of the commercial is kind of weird because he didn't really do anything.
No.
I think it was the look on his face that was kind of that's what they were trying to.
I mean, yeah, whatever.
I get what you're saying.
I just that's where I I see all of this as it becomes you're the enemy, and now the interaction between the two is so fucking awkward because of what's happened.
Yeah, it got pointed out to me. This got pointed out to me on our forum a little while ago, and I thought it was brilliant. There was this huge debate about this. I don't remember what it was. It was a tweet, and it was somebody just said something that was just absurd, and it was somebody on the left that said something absurd. And so there's this huge debate on the forum, and one of the guys on there, I don't remember who it was.
Oh, I remember this.
Commented, and he goes, because of social media, anybody can say anything, and I wonder if the opposite side pulls out the craziest shit,
Right. Totally.
and then uses that to fire their side up against the other side. And I said, whoa.
100%.
That's true. It's absolutely true, because I bet I could go on Twitter and find some random asshole who on his thing says, hardcore conservative, and then makes a racist tweet.
Right, totally.
And I could pull that and I could share it, and everybody that's what conservatives are like. We're pissed off.
Yeah.
Or, some...
They wear red hats and they're racist.
Yeah, or some, whatever, right? Or some liberal person was like, we need communism. It's the only way to whatever. And everybody's like,
yeah. Che Guevara shirt. Yeah. You.
So I think a lot of that might be happening. These commercials and stuff. I wonder if they're really that big of a deal, or if we're told.
Right. If we weren't right, if a bunch of people didn't write up about it, and you just watched the commercial,
I would have rolled my eyes. Is all. I would have watched and be like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. You wouldn't have thought nothing of
Big
it.
obvious.
Yeah.
But that's what I meant. That's why I compared it to the Kaepernick thing. Is that and same thing with Kaepernick. Just him making the stand for something that he believes in, whatever. I'm all pro that. You know what I'm saying? And then the NFL letting him go, because I'm also pro that. I support that whole idea. But because we divided us and said you got to choose a side, either
And it defines you.
right. Either one, you're for the flag, and you're just right, or you're somebody who's for black people. It's one or the other. I don't have a choice. I'm either for the
Really?
flag
Is
or
that
I'm
my only options?
Yeah, I'm either for the flag or I'm for black people. I can't be for both. You know what I'm saying? I had to choose a side, which is so lame to me.
Yeah, it is. That's such a good point.
Yeah, it is.
God, we need to start doing this more on everything. We need to pull up shit and be like, do we really care?
Yeah.
Is it that big of a deal?
No.
I don't know.
Not really. Fucking shave your beard. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I feel like we're always cool with people in person.
That's-
We can work things out as long as. And I feel the more the problem is that we just don't interact with people the way we used to. It's all virtually and so the most inflammatory people get the most attention.
Period.
Yeah.
Period. Because if I say some normal, regular shit,
Right.
like if I did a tweet today and I'm
Boring.
like, and I'm like, hey, you know, most people are pretty cool, you know, and you know, things are going pretty good right now.
Yeah, whatever, Sal.
No, yeah.
Look over here.
Yeah, nobody cares about anything. If
Look at this shit.
Yeah, redheaded people are the worst, you know, whatever. Oh my God, look what this guy said, and they share it all over the place.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and they spend, and that's the game. That's the game, and that's because I want people to realize this. Okay, realize this right now. The last presidential election, just the election. And this is the you know, coming up to getting you to vote for the president, okay? $1 billion was spent on getting the president elected, or just on the whole election process, not just on him, but on both sides, right? That doesn't count the rest of the time, like before the election,
Right.
where they're always spending money,
All the smoozing going on.
always.
Like
Well, they're always spending money to get you to believe one thing or another. So and you can't tell me with all that money they're not doing all their fucking research. You can't tell me they're not hiring the most brilliant advertising, you know, people, the most brilliant psychologists. They literally, this is true, they would literally have test groups, and they'll have a test group sit in a room of undecided voters, for example. And they'll all have, so these are people who are kind of on the fence between Republican and Democrat, and they'll have them sit down. And they'll say, okay, we want to start, you know, we think we might need to go to war with this country. Here's the different terms we're going to use to describe the situation over there. You know, we're going to say that they're, you know, hurting children. You know, is that piss you off? And people will vote. We're going to say that. And they'll come up with terminology.
Yeah.
And then that they find in the test groups to be the most effective. And then what you'll find is, miraculously, all of a sudden, all the politicians on that side use the same terminology, like weapons of mass destruction. All of a sudden, everybody was saying the same fucking thing. And why? Because they did test groups and they found that really got people scared.
Right. Yeah.
And so all this money gets spent on this stuff. So it only makes sense. I'm pretty sure that they're scouring Twitter and they're scouring the internet, and they're like, oh, this, in our test groups, this really fucking pissed them off and made them hate liberals, or made them hate conservatives.
Yeah.
Let's do an article on this and talk about how they're fucking ruining the country. Put this out there, and next thing you know, it goes absolutely insane. So yeah, we got to be more aware of that.
Eagle has landed. Today's Squad is brought to you by MAPS Anabolic. If you're looking to maximize your overall muscle and strength, MAPS Anabolic is the perfect place to start. With a full 30-day money-back guarantee, there is absolutely zero risk. So what are you waiting for? Go to mindpumpmedia.com and get started today.
It's the motherfucking Quad.
Eagle has landed.
Qui-qua.
First question is from Arya Safai.
Our boy.
All right.
Shredded.
So when you're already very low on calories and doing a good amount of cardio after being on a diet for a while, what's more effective for losing fat and retaining muscle? More cardio or fewer calories, considering they equal the same daily caloric deficit and also eating the same amount of protein?
Okay.
This is a really interesting question.
So where do you go from here, basically, is what he's saying. So I'm already eating low calories. I'm already, doing a decent amount of cardio, but I want to keep getting leaner. Do I add cardio or do I cut calories? God, what would you do with your people, Adam, when you hit this situation?
That's why I wanted to do this question, because I think there's a lot of different scenarios that would dictate what I would say or what I would do. And that really, like when he says I'm already eating low calorie, like my question would be how low of calorie, because I would always rather take calories away or increase normal movement like NEAT or through more volume in my training before cardio. Cardio, in my opinion, is the last place that I want to go. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't had to go there because if you are that low of calorie where now I'm not even giving my body a sufficient amount of nutrients to maintain my lean body mass, then I'm going to probably add little bits of cardio in there. But I would always rather do it through NEAT or through reducing the calories. And so it would matter where that person is. And I've had a bikini competitor that I'd be training, and she's down to as low as like 1,300 calories. At that point, I don't want to take any more calories from you. I would rather create more movement to create more of a deficit. So in that case, I would probably add more cardio, even though technically I would probably add just more steps and movement is what I would do over cardio. So, or less, so something that very low impact.
Yeah, you don't want to stress the body anymore.
Right. I mean, when you're trying to hang on to as much muscle as possible, you're extremely low calorie. And then and cardio, quote unquote cardio, would be you pushing your heart rate to your cardio threshold. And that is like, that's high enough intensity that you're going to send a signal to the body that's not advantageous for it to have this muscle mass on it. So I would not want to add cardio. That would be the very last resort. I would go more step walking, just tell them to walk more to create more of a deficit, or I would cut calories. And I would cut calories first if I had room. But if I'm already at my lowest amount for me to even hit my macronutrient targets that I need to hang on to that lean body mass, then I'm going to go with just more movement.
Yeah, because I've seen people literally go down to their calories are so low where most of all they eat is protein, which you'll lose muscle if you do that, you'll just feel like absolute shit. Here's something that I've never competed, and I've worked with very, very few competitors pre-contest. I have worked with competitors, but it's always after a contest and to help them, repair metabolism, quote unquote, or just help them get, healthy and normal. But for myself, when I've gotten really shredded and I've gotten down to single-digit body fat percentages many times, and the lowest I've ever gotten was probably close to 4%. What helped me and I did get to this point, my calories were low, I was already doing cardio, and I wanted to get even leaner. And one of the best things I ever did was just trigger sessions. Trigger sessions were, and here's why I like doing trigger sessions to burn more calories, because they tend to be muscle stimulating rather than muscle burning, and they also burn calories.
Right.
So it's still activity, but it's an activity that sends a muscle building signal. And
you're not doing a ton of damage.
No.
That's why I would rather walk or increase volume of training.
Yeah.
Because walking or increasing volume of training, I think it's more likely you're going to keep your lean body mass opposed to just adding more cardio. And I don't know. I haven't been watching Arya. I know he just came off. I was watching him a few weeks ago. He just came off one of his biggest bulks that he's ever done.
I think he got his body weight up to like 219.
I think he's bigger than he's ever been before, and now he's cutting down. And I would have liked to got a hold of him right then when he made that transition and find and assess where he's at movement wise, assess where he's at calorie wise, assess where he's at training volume wise, and then give him advice from there. Because where we're taking this question off from is a very tough one, because I wouldn't want you to get to this position like where you're already doing a ton of cardio, you're already at extremely low calorie, and then you're asking a question like that.
A rock in a hard place.
Right. If I'm a good coach, I've got you down to this point without any cardio. And I mean, this is how I've coached all my athletes is for competing, right? For physique or bikini or bodybuilding, is always been to, we figure out how many steps they're at before we start the cut, okay? And just let's say for hypothetical reasons, because the average is around 4, let's just say you're at 5,000 or 6,000 steps a day, and you're at X amount of calories. The very first thing I'm going to do is just slightly reduce the caloric intake just a little bit. You're coming off a bulk, so you're probably eating a massive surplus. So I don't need to go way the other direction. I'm just going to cut maybe 500 calories a day and then give you a very small increase in movement and steps, like maybe 1,000 more steps per day. So that person goes from 6 to 7,000. So now they're at 7,000. They also have a calorie deficit. Now I'm going to ride that for a week or two or however long I can get of you just slowly leaning out from that. And then when I start to see their bodies slow up as far as results and change, then I'm gonna bring the calories down a tiny bit more again, and then also increase their steps again. And I'm gonna play this game all the way until we're almost down to stage time, and as long as I can, before it gets to a point where they're just like, okay, Adam, I am having a hard time getting that many steps in without getting on a piece of equipment and moving at a little bit faster pace or scheduling that into my day. And that's when cardio now gets introduced into our programming. And some clients are really good at adhering to this, and others it's been a challenge for me. I think Melissa was one of the last ones that I coached that I thought did this, she did it perfect. And we would head into every one of her shows, the last week or two would be the first time that she really get on a treadmill or get on some cardio. Everything else was manipulated through just more steps, more movement, and then training volume and then calories.
So hypothetically speaking, let's say right now let's say he says he's doing a good amount of cardio. So let's say he's doing 45 minutes a day of cardio, maybe 2 sessions, like 20 minutes in the morning, 25 minutes at night. His calories, he says, are already low. So let's just take his word for it. They're already pretty low. What if he did something like this? Rather than doing more cardio and cutting calories, and he's already working out, so he's lifting, what if he just added every day an 8 or 10 minute trigger session, in the daytime, and an 8 or 10 minute trigger session in the evening, which would essentially give him another 16 to 20 total minutes of activity.
Right.
But it's a trigger session. He's using bands. He's getting a pump. He's feeling the muscles work. It facilitates recovery. He can target different body parts if he wants to. What about something like that?
Yeah, no, I like that because I've recommended things like this where I'll tell them to go for like a hike for like a half hour, an hour, go for a walk, right? It's a walk. And, every quarter mile or every X amount of minutes that you're walking, get down, do some push-ups, do some squats.
Like a trigger session.
Yeah,
exactly.
grab it. Like I've had a lot of clients that have like those little parks nearby their house that have the pull-up bars and have like these little things. And I'll tell them to walk laps. And every time they come around on the lap, do 15 squats, do 10 pull-ups, do whatever push-ups, and then get back to your walk, and just kind of do that for why I like doing that with the walking is it's going to definitely create that caloric deficit that you're going to need if you're going to keep leaning out. Plus, we're doing like a trigger session like you're alluding to right now, so we're stimulating that response of, hey, we need this muscle.
Especially a guy like Arya, he's got such good muscle building genetics. I mean, he's a natural physique competitor, and the guy looks insane. I bet if he did trigger sessions throughout the day, focusing on those body parts, they'd probably come up.
That's another good point that you just bring up, and that's how this advice also changes who I'm talking to. So ex-girlfriend of mine competed in physique, and she had an unbelievable ability to touch weights, and muscle just built on her. And for the life of her, she had such a hard time leaning out. And so that body type, that person who just hangs on to muscle and has no problem building it,
you can cardio the fuck out of him.
I would cardio the fuck out of this person. So that's a really good point and thought pertaining to this question, that this is where there is an individual variance is if I'm talking to somebody who like my body type, I look at a treadmill and fucking weight falls off of me. It's crazy. I mean, and if at all I am too low calorie wise, I'm not getting enough nutrients, and if I'm doing any sort of muscle will go off right with it. Just as fast as I'll lean out, I'll lose muscle. It's just my body type. I'm not built that way. And so if I have a client who's like me in that I'm scared to death of cardio, I'm trying to create walking movement, trigger sessions, everything through nutrition that I can without getting on a treadmill because my body responds that way. Now, the opposite is true when I have somebody who has a real hard time leaning out. They barely touch weights. They build muscle. They seem to always have that muscle on them, but it's really hard for them to lose body fat. That person, they're probably somebody who I can push cardio-wise a little more and not be so worried about them losing muscle.
Next question is from Levi Benson. Is fiber the most underappreciated macronutrient, or is it the least important?
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that the people, even like Lane Norton, who's a proponent of IIFYM, he also gives his people fiber requirements or fiber. He considers it to be almost a macronutrient. Like you have your proteins, fats, and carbs.
I do too.
And he tells people that fiber
I do
as
too,
well.
and I'll tell you why. I mean, aside from the role that it plays with your metabolism, it's definitely something. And I pieced this together when I got into competing and I started coaching a lot of my competitors. It's a very, very common thing for people to lack enough fiber, especially when they eat really clean. When they eat really clean and if they're not like incorporating a lot of berries and fruit and high fibrous foods, it's really easy to be coming in under your fiber, your minimum fiber intake every single day. And what I've noticed that what it results in, so if you don't get enough fiber, your stool is not regular. You tend to hold on to water. And what ends up happening is you get this kind of mental fuck because you're not dropping weight the way you should be based off of your caloric deficit because you're not also shitting regularly. Mm-hmm. And what would happen is I would see some, and I would be watching someone's diet and I'd be like, okay, they've missed 2-3 days in a row of their fiber intake, and then they're sending me their weekly update of their pictures or showing me their scale and their weight, and they're not moving. They're going, what the fuck's going on? And then I'd be like, hey, I want you to have like 2 cups of berries today, or have a bunch of spinach, or I'd put something in their diet to shoot their fiber way up, and then lo and behold, all of a sudden they'd poop multiple times, and all of a sudden their weight would drop, and then
I think it's almost pretty obvious that it's a very vital component to your digestive tract and moving things along and helping out like your intestines and making sure everything's healthy within like that whole process. But I was trying to think, like I remember we had the carnivore diet doctor on, right?
Sean Baker, excuse me.
He was the only one that besides him and maybe the IFYM crowd, like probably doesn't consider it quite as important as most people would who, just have a regular balanced diet. But I was trying to remember his argument for the fact that, fiber is somewhat overrated in terms of what it's actually providing nutrient wise.
Yeah,
Do you remember what his argument was?
Yeah, he said, well, it's not essential. Okay, can you get away with not eating fiber? Yeah. You can get away with it. Is it optimal? No. The studies are there have been a lot of studies done on fiber, and they all show that eating a diet that's high in quality fiber, both soluble and insoluble fiber, benefits your health in many different ways. Improves longevity, reduces heart disease risk, lowers bad cholesterol, helps prevent things like diabetes. So it's something that you should probably be consuming. If it feeds the gut microbiome, certain fibers are essential to feed the healthy bacteria that's in your gut. So you don't want to starve those out because those are also very important. And anthropologists who will study fossil records and study the diets of man thousands of years ago, we ate a very high fiber diet. Probably. I mean, we probably did. If we saw a plant that we could eat, we probably ate it. Mm-hmm. Remember, humans are opportunists when it comes to food. So, yes, we were hunters. Yes, we probably ate animal when we could. And in between that, we ate a shit ton of plant. And plants then aren't like the plants now. Plants then were a lot more fibrous than they are today. We've really done a job of modifying plants through breeding, and of course later on through more complex methods of irradiation or genetically modifications, where the plants have become less fibrous because fiber doesn't taste good, and become more calorically dense, sugar dense types of foods. So like if you look at an apple today is far larger, far more dense in terms of sugars and calories and other types of nutrients, but far less seeds and fiber than original apples. You look at corn, for example. Corn is now a starch bomb, whereas before there was a lot more fiber and a lot less of the starch. Humans just ate a lot of it before, and our bodies evolved eating lots of fiber, and so
I notice
it's important.
I notice a big difference, aesthetically, right? When we're talking about that with clients that were eating whatever the fuck they wanted, and then they decide to go on this diet with you, and then they end up not eating enough fiber. Super common, because it seems like all your boxed and shit is like infused. They got infused fiber into everything. So
grains, a lot of grains.
Yeah, right. So you're getting a lot of fiber when you're kind of eating all over the place. And then all of a sudden you get on this like
bloating, constipation. I mean, that has to play a factor.
Well, yeah. So then you switch over and you decide, okay, my new way of life, or I hire my trainer Adam, and now I'm following the turkey, rice, and vegetable diet or whatever.
They end up eating low fiber.
Yeah, then they're eating extremely low fiber, and they're holding on to water. Their stomach's inflamed a little bit, and then on top of that, they're not shitting like they normally should. So their body weight's staying the same. They're kind of bloated, feeling, holding water. And they're going, what the fuck's going on? I'm eating super clean. And one of the number one things that I've ever tweaked on a diet that's very, very common when I get somebody who is eating poorly and then all of a sudden is eating well is the under consumption, especially if you've got your body adapted to used to having lots of fiber. It's eating a lot of shit too, but it's eating a lot of fiber. So your stool's all normal. Then you switch over to a really clean diet. Fiber gets reduced by 50, 80, how much percent. And now all of a sudden you're having this issue. And then I shoot a bunch more fiber back into their diet. They have a normal stool 2-3 days later, and it's like, oh, wow, now I feel much better.
And you're
I look
saying
better.
your preferred ways of increasing that for clients was like berries?
Berries and spinach. Yeah, those tend to be like areas that I can get it. I mean, obviously all your veggies and greens and things like that are great sources. That berries are a quick way too that don't have as much. So blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, all your berries, for the amount of calories and sugar that you're getting for the amount of fiber you're getting, it almost negates. Like it's, and I know some people,
they're fairly low glycemic if you steer more towards berries,
the
than
lowest
other fruits,
the lowest, and so the most bang for your and antioxidant wise. So it's berries are one of the most antioxidant rich, fiber rich foods that we can have, and so that would be like a recommended thing that I would do is I'd have them have like a big old thing of all the berries and have that for a couple meals within there, or a couple times within the day, couple days in a row, and then all of a sudden you see the stool come back to normal.
What I like to do is I like to eat large amounts of fibrous vegetables, but I have to cook them very well, because if I don't, then they can cause gastro distress. And I've had issues with clients with this as well, where they're like, well, I'm eating all this broccoli and it's hurting my stomach and I've got all this gas. I'm like, are you eating it raw? Yeah, are you eating it raw? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Cook it because it helps your body deal with the fiber that's in there. So what I'll do, my favorite source is I'll eat rapini, or otherwise known as Rabe, R-A-B-E, and I'll buy a bushel of it, and I'll boil the shit out of it and just put olive oil on it, and I'm able to consume 1 or 2 bushels to myself, and my digestion is phenomenal when I do that. So that's just another I guess trick you can use for yourself.
Next up is the Holistic Hipster. Being trainers, the three of you must have trained several successful and wise clients. What would you say is the most impactful piece of advice that a client has given you in regards to personal growth?
Wow.
So much.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the hardest part about this question will be narrowing it down to the most impactful piece. The first one that comes to mind for me is I struggled for a very long time with this guilt to help my mom financially. And this was like a major, major burden that I carried for a very, very long time. And part of it I created for myself because I allowed this behavior. I allowed her to manipulate me for a long time. And it's tough when it's your mom, right? Your mom you love. And I used, part of my motivation to be successful when I was younger was to buy my mom a house one day. And I remember having a couple really wise clients that I had a lot of respect for, and I'd share with them what's going on with me, and all of them were kind of saying the same thing, and that was when it finally sunk in for me, and that was, you're enabling your mother, and you're doing it because you think you love her, but if you started to look at it through a different lens, that every time that you give her money when she says she needs it and she needs help, that you're actually hurting her. And if you could start to look at it that way, maybe it would change your behaviors. And and they went deeper into explaining how I'm technically hurting them by giving them money, giving her money financially. And that was big for me. It was, and it was a really tough thing for me to go through, where I stopped doing that, because I started to do it also for my 2 youngest siblings, who we have over 10 years apart from each other, and I became kind of like this father figure for them, where every time I came into town, I was buying the things that they needed, whether it be soccer cleats or new outfit for school or whatever, computer, all kinds of shit, right? So I did that for a very long time for my siblings. And a lot of that too was my own insecurities of one, and that which was tough. And through these clients, I started to reflect on myself, like, I always had this chip on my shoulder to prove that I was successful. I didn't finish college, so I always had this on, this monkey on my back of, because I didn't go to college, like, can I be successful and do well? And I did very well, and I was well off, but then I also felt like I needed to show that. And one of the ways that I justified that was by buying people things all the time. And, I spent a lot of money on my siblings and my mom, partially one because I thought that I was loving them by doing that, but in reality I was really feeding insecurity, and I was also enabling my mother. So I think when I think of personal growth and the most impactful thing that's probably been given to me from clients, that was probably something that fundamentally changed my life forever and for the better. But man, I could sit here, I could go a whole 2-hour podcast and talk about the wisdom that I gained from clients.
Oh, I a lot of what I learned from clients was just through observation. I mean, I've shared this story before. I had a client who was self-made, very successful, and I asked him. He was an older gentleman in his mid-70s, and I said, "Well, can you tell me like how to be like what do I need to do to become successful like you?" And he says, "You're asking me the wrong question." He said, "Ask me how many times I failed." Mm-hmm. And so he went into telling me about all the times he'd gone bankrupt and how life is like a game. And he goes, "It'll pitch you as many balls as you're willing to swing at." And I remember that being kind of like, oh, like so if I fail, it's not the last time. I can keep going. And so I remember, getting that lesson from him. But I know what also just came to me was I had a client. He ended up becoming a good friend of mine, Marco. He might be listening. Good friend of mine, great guy. And he hired me probably about a year and a half after he had gotten divorced. And he had gained a bunch of weight through the stress of the divorce and all that stuff. And he had 4 kids. And, we started working out together, and he got in shape with me and all that stuff. And as we became, friends, as you guys know, when you train someone for years, you end up talking about everything. This is somebody I was seeing 2 to 3 days a week for an hour. You're going to talk about all kinds of different things. And what was crazy to me was how him, and this was a long time ago, how him and his ex-wife handled their divorce with their children. He was so involved with his kids. He would text his ex-wife, even though she was married to someone else and he was seeing someone else. They would text each other. Oh, they talk about their kids. Okay, what happened in school, and make sure you do this for your kid, and no problem. And he would tell me about the difficulties. He's like, and I remember I'd have these conversations because at the time I was very unhappy in my marriage. I mean, when you talk to people who've been married for a long time and they get divorced, the last 5 years or so, it's like they've been thinking about it, right? And that was me. And so here he is. He's telling me kind of how he handled his ex-wife and how they worked together. And towards the end, this was now 7 years later or whatever, they had developed a kind of relationship where they would go on vacations together. Not just him and his ex-wife, but him and his new wife, his ex-wife and her new husband, and the kids. And he sat there and he told me, he goes, we do this not because we like each other. I don't want to hang out with my ex-wife. I really don't care. Besides our history of having these kids together, I could care less. He goes, but the kids get to see how all these people are doing this for them. And this woman is going to be in my life forever because we share these children. Why not have a good relationship where we work together rather than fighting? And it was I'd never seen an example of this before. And it was his example that that I try to still follow today with how I am with my kids and my ex-wife and how we try to work together and all that stuff. And it requires a tremendous amount of maturity. It's not easy because obviously you got to think about why you're getting divorced in the first place. You don't like each other. So now you got to figure out how to really work together and not piss each other off even more, especially now that you're not even living together and you want to tell the person to fuck off or whatever. It takes a ridiculous amount of maturity. But watching him do that really influenced me, and now the way we handle it now, it's not perfect, but it's for my kids. I can see my kids are thriving as a result of it. So
yeah, I can echo a lot, especially the first example you brought up with failure and just observing how some of my high profile clients really dealt with their struggles and their pursuits, in their different respective businesses. And one of them that really stood out, and I still train one client today for a very specific reason. She's been a very instrumental part of my growth as a human being. And I think it's a relationship that also we've played off of each other in different stages of growth and pursuits, and I've seen decisions she's made, really, really hard decisions, where she took a complete 180 and did the opposite of what she was doing because realized this was not the direction that she wanted to go. And I thought that was like very brave. And that was a big lesson for me. It was like all in, but realizing this has an ending that I don't agree with. I don't want to go in this direction. I'm just going to completely turn the ship in the opposite direction and be confident in that decision and reinvent myself. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I can't believe like you just don't see that a lot. And that was like huge for me because, you know, you do things and you see like all the momentum, and a lot of times like if you're working on something so hard, you get like the horse blinders on and you see just one thing and all you can see is the vision of that thing. And then you get closer and closer and you realize, well, I don't really know if that's where I want to be and that's who I want to be and that's what I want to do. And, you know, like knowing that you always have an option of just completely reinventing and starting over. And yeah, it's tough and it's a hard road, but it's all in your mindset. It's all like it's all accomplishable.
Yeah. The thing I think I miss most about training clients is what I would get. I would get from them
for sure.
I mean, it's one of the reasons why I used to love training the elderly. I loved training the elderly because these are people who are
been on the earth a lot longer than you.
They just, I mean, there's just a truth there, right? Like, I'm not saying this is true for everybody who's you know, a lot older than me. I'm sure there's a lot of, you know, idiots out there that are older, but many times you're looking at somebody like, think about this. Like, I used to say this to my staff all the time because they would, you know, they'd be like, God, you love training, you know, because I'd have at one point a good 1/3 of my clients, which is a lot because usually it's not that many at all. 1/3 of my clients was like 78 or older. So I'd have all these old people that would come in and some of them would have a walker or a cane or whatever, and we'd do this correctional work and we'd sit down and talk. And I used to tell them, I'd be like, you know, I know how I think now versus how I used to think 10 years ago. Totally different.
Yeah.
And the only difference is time.
Yeah, imagine when you've gone through that rotation 4 times.
I wish, imagine, exactly.
Wisdom.
Like, imagine if you could talk to your 80-year-old self.
Yeah.
If you could sit down with your 80-year-old self, that wisdom is you can't. There's
a lot of patterns in life, and there's a lot of things in history that continue to resurface just with a new title or a new face, right?
Yes.
Even like how we open this whole podcast up when we're talking about the Gillette thing and the dividing people and this and that. Like, you talk to someone who's in their 80s and they'll probably have a story for you where something very similar to that in the news happened in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Like, they'll be able to tell you like, yeah, it's no different than this, than that, and then they be able to explain the outcome of that and this, and it's like, okay.
Exactly, because I think sometimes you look at someone who's older, like, and it's crazy because most cultures, especially old cultures, revere their elderly because of their wisdom. And for whatever reason, the newer cultures, we revere youth, mainly because of, I think it's advertising, because sex sells and it's attractive and all that stuff. So we place a lot of value on that. But really there's more value in wisdom, okay? And as you get older, you realize this because then you become more wise. You're like, oh yeah, 10 years ago, I thought I knew everything. It's funny, 20-year-old me thought he knew everything. Like, I was convinced, like, I fucking got this, man. I'm making good money. I got a house.
It's like
whatever.
The conversation you brought up with we were talking with Danny and stuff, being such a smart kid because he's read so much. I mean, the kid's got more national certs than I ever had. Right now, what is he, fucking early 20s?
Yeah.
More. He's accumulated more certifications in his few years than I have in my total career. He's CSCS. He's got his degree in kines. Like, just a brilliant young man, But there's something about applying a lot of that knowledge to hundreds and hundreds of people that, there's certain things you talk differently about the points that you felt so passionately about back then because you realize that, like, wow, that's a bunch of hot air that doesn't even matter. Like, what really matters is me speaking to these points because that's what's going to make the difference in people. And you just don't know that until you've been around long enough and applied a lot of this knowledge. And that's not to devalue the education and the knowledge, because I think that's important. So you have something to pull from and then to take and to apply towards people. So you then have practical.
What does Paul Chek say? Wisdom is the synthesis of experience and knowledge.
Oh yeah.
So you take those two, you combine them, and then you get wisdom. You got to have the knowledge, but you got to have experience. in order to create wisdom. And it's funny. It's like, again, we don't revere the older people in this country, and we should, because that the only way you can get wisdom is through experience. So the only people that have it are people who've experienced a lot and been around typically for a long time. I mean, there's younger people with more wisdom than some older people just because they've lived more in their youth than some older people have in their lives. But more often than not, you meet an 80-year-old, you sit down with them and you ask them a question, and don't have this like, oh, you're old, you don't understand me. Oh, when you were a kid, you had black and white TVs, you didn't even have computers. Like, dump all that out. Like just like Adam said, the wisdom. And again, you can read ancient texts. You know, if you look at like ancient practices, spiritual practices, religions, if you look in them, you'll find a lot of wisdom that is true today. You know, we talk about abstaining. Fasting, stuff like that. They've been talking about this shit for thousands of years. Now we got all the science that supports it, and it's good for you, and this, that, and the other. They've known this forever. All these practices,
right? And they didn't need a study to tell them.
Yeah. Rituals. Yeah. You know, I used to think rituals were stupid. Oh, rituals. What do we need rituals for? Then you realize what rituals do. Rituals are important because they put you in a particular state of mind, and rituals help ritualize things to help create a practice. So although it's true that you may be able to, you can get a good workout just by going to the gym and working out, creating the ritual of putting on the right workout clothes, getting into the mental state with the music, whatever your ritual is, that may actually improve your ability to have better workouts. It's a stupid example, but I think you get the point. So I remember one time I was having a conversation with one of my older clients, and we were talking about friendships. And I was like, I was talking about this friend that I had, and we weren't really close anymore, and she said something just so simple, but it made so much sense. And she sat there and she goes, Sal, when you have a garden and you're watering it, it's beautiful. She's like, the second you stop watering it, it dies. She's like, all relationships are like this. You have to water them every single day. And I was like, well, fuck me. Yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah. Like,
that's 100% true. I don't care what relationship you have. You stop watering it, that shit'll die. Yeah. So anyway, that's my piece there.
Next question is from Ryan Alduenda. What is the worst piece of advice a fellow podcaster has given you about your business?
We're going to start launching.
Here we go.
Well, I don't, I have two that come to mind right away. Even though I don't think we've got a lot of bad advice from other podcasters. In fact, I think that there's a lot of good relationships that we've forged in the podcasting space, and for the most part, I think everybody has been pretty well received, and I think everybody I think you have a lot of intelligent people in the podcasting space, so a lot of people sharing good information.
It's a newer space too, so I don't know if there's a lot of
there's and it's hard to say what constitutes bad, but I have two things that come to mind when asked this question. The first one that goes to the very beginning when we first started, and even though Craig is not a fellow technically podcaster, I know he's talked about getting into podcasting, and he technically was a part of Mind Pump when we first started, so you could argue that he kind of was. And I remember, and this was really, I think, the sign that it wasn't meant to be for all four of us to be together, and it was after one of the first episodes that we had ever recorded, which has never aired. And I know what Justin, Sal, and how we all feel about the vision of Mind Pump and how we wanted it to come off with this very real and authentic conversation amongst a couple of smart guys that don't agree on everything, and just let it flow and let it be organic. And I remember hanging the mics up after that episode, and Craig, Craig's an alpha and a leader like all of us, and so he asserted himself right away and was like, okay, I think the next episode, Justin is going to intro and start, and then I'll talk, and then Adam can talk, and then Sal will talk last because Sal did all the talking on this last one. And he was so concerned about who got
airtime.
Yeah, who got airtime, who was going to be looked at as the authority. He wanted to be evenly dispersed amongst all of us because he cared about that.
I remember that.
And I understand that. Like, I get it, but I also knew that the three of us weren't like this.
Yeah, it's not the dynamic.
We didn't care. No one here cares who comes off smarter, who's more of this, who's more of that. It was, we wanted to present a very authentic, organic conversation that people can not only enjoy but also learn from and feel like they're a part of, versus this formulaic conversation that is designed to make you see that all four of us are very smart, are equally good at what we do, and we're all equal. It's like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care if someone judges me as less equal than the other two men in this room. That's not why we do this. And so I think that was really bad advice. If we would have followed that, I think that could have crushed the business. So that's the first one that I remember. Then the other one was when I had Connor come stay with me. I brought Connor in from On It after we met him, and I remember meeting him, and we all really liked him a lot. Like we hit it off with him. He's got a great personality.
He's not with them anymore, right? He's not with On It anymore.
No, he still is.
Is he still with On It?
Yeah, he does something else for them, I believe. That's a good question. I don't know if he's I don't know if he's on the payroll anymore. I don't know his financial situation, but he's definitely not doing what he was doing for On It back then. But I really liked him. We all did. And I remember telling the guys, like, hey, I'm going to invite this kid to come out and stay with me. And to be honest with you, I was looking to shark him potentially and see if he was somebody who we could implement into the Mind Pump culture and he could fit in. And I spent 2 or 3 days with him and quickly found out that wasn't going to be the case. And part of that comes from some of the advice that he given. Some of the advice that he had gave me was to reach out to Barbell Shrugged for one of the areas that we were currently working on in the business. And that was when I knew that he didn't see or have an idea of what we were really doing, because I wasn't impressed with anything that Barbell Shrugged was doing. And when he gave me that advice,
what was this in regards to like programs?
So at that time we were just getting into Facebook advertising, and we hadn't even hired Casey and his company to do our advertising for us. And he had told me to reach out to Barbell Shrugged because they were the masters at that. And he doesn't know this. I mean, he will if he listens to the show now, but. I had already gone through all their business and looked at what they were doing, and I wasn't impressed with anything. In fact, I think in business, we have discussed this before. There's a great TED Talk, or I think it's a TED Talk, about Netflix and the importance of timing in business. I mean, timing is the number one reason why most companies are very successful, and I think Barbell Shrugged did a good job of timing their time in the market, and that was a lot of their success. But as far as how their business is operated, I wasn't impressed. And, so that was the other thing that came to mind when I think of someone giving me advice business-wise on what I should follow or look at. And at that time, I knew where we needed to go as far as marketing and advertising, and that was before Casey even came on board. And I know when we met with him and presented the vision of Mind Pump, like, he was definitely the right match for what we were trying to do.
I can kind of remember one, I don't know specifically who had mentioned it or not, but I just remember like the sentiment for most podcasts at the time was to try to get on a network and for them to be able to basically get you all the advertisement, and then they're going to take about half of the revenue that you accumulate from that, and you're going to do a read. And so basically it had a lot of the same feel as radio and, a lot of the infrastructure for that. So there was a thought in that direction of like, oh, is that really how this is going to work? Is that going to fit well with our business? And quickly we all agreed that just would not fit with what we're presenting. We're presenting, real companies we believe in and vet them. And you're basically hands off for the most part when you give that off to a network like that to basically do all the work for you.
What a great point, Justin. I can't believe I let that slip, because yesterday I was literally talking to somebody who's going live on a podcast in February. And she was telling me that part of the motivation was that her co-host has a connection through one of these networks, and that they would, set her up with potential commercials and this and that. And I told her one of the biggest mistakes I think people make are going through these networks. First of all, one, they take 50% of your money minimum that you're going to make on the commercials. Two, they are supporting the brand, not you. Their job is to use the collection of people that are looking to advertise in the podcasting space, and then to try and match it with you. So they're really representing them and not you. And I remember when we were thinking about that also, and that was horrible advice. And one of the best things that we ever did was having Taylor create that side of the house.
Yeah.
So we have an in-house system, which is to another good point that somebody brought up on the forum about the companies that we represent on here. People don't know, well, maybe some people know because I've mentioned it, I think, before. But many of the companies that we talk about, we've been courting them for some of them as long as a year and a half before we even onboard them as a sponsor. And a lot of that is us hanging out with the CEOs of those companies and Taylor going back and forth and telling them our standards with things.
Using their products forever.
using their products for a very long time. Like
people don't know, many times we'll use the products for months before we decide, because we would just want to see, how do we feel? How do we like it? What do we not like about it?
Yeah.
Before we ever mention anything, because there's a little bit of responsibility that we feel. We don't want to promote something that isn't legit or isn't going to be good. Like, I don't want to promote something just because it looks good on paper, and then I get, people end up getting bad reactions or whatever. That's a big one. I think, two parts here. First off, I think for some people, it's a good idea to work for a network. I think if you feel like you just want to be a podcast host, then that might be a good idea. Now, all of us didn't do this with the ideas of just being podcast hosts. Our ideas were to start a movement and a business. And so we wanted to own it. We wanted to own what we did. And we also looked at the long game. We didn't sign with a sponsor for a long time. It was like, first of all, we didn't sell a thing for a year, and we didn't really sign with sponsors until 2 or something like years later.
Yeah, well, last year was the first year that we made any real decent money.
Right. And so because we were looking at the long game and we want to own that, and we were trying to create a media company. So if your goal is just to be a podcast host and you're not trying to own a business or anything, you just want to be a host, you want to show up to work, get paid to just talk on a podcast, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, if you look at it more like radio.
Yes.
Like you have content, you're coming in, you're doing your job, and then you go home. That's where a network.
That's a fair argument, I think.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's obviously
because you're going to see more of that.
Well, not only that, but it's also required us to have somebody on staff like Taylor. That's literally his full-time job. That's like how much vetting and conversations and back and forth that happens between sponsors is that it has supported a person's full-time job to do nothing but that.
Right. And I think you're going to see more of that. I think as the space grows, you're going to see more and more of these talented hosts get picked up by networks, and these hosts have no interest in becoming business owners. They have no interest in anything aside from being on a podcast and talking about a particular subject. The other thing too is and this is something that we all had in common, and thank God, because it would have caused a lot of problems if we didn't, but all of us really don't like anybody telling us what we can and can't say or do. Not even our sponsors. We've actually gotten into this problem with sponsors, where sponsors will send a message to us and be like, hey, we want you to read this, for you. And we'll be like, no, we'll say what we want. We'll be honest. And then if you don't like our performance, then we don't have to work with you. But they always like our performance. But I don't want to work for a network and then have someone tell me, hey, you shouldn't have said that. Hey, you should say this. Here's what I want you to do. No. I'll do what I want.
Right.
And in fact, telling me what to do, it's a great way to get me to do the opposite of that. And then back to what you were saying earlier in the question, Adam, about timing. I mean, and by the way, Barbell Shrug guys, great guys. Anders, great guy. Talked to him a few times. Nice, very, very nice dude. But you're right. The timing was absolutely perfect. They got into the podcast space before we did, when it was really early, and they attached themselves to an exploding brand. They were the CrossFit podcast.
Right.
So CrossFit itself exploded in the fitness scene, and it was kind of this new cutting-edge way of working out. Everybody in it had this attitude of, we're going to do things differently, we're going to eat differently, we're going to dress differently, we're going to talk about things differently, and we're going to listen to this new thing called podcast. What's the one podcast that's for CrossFit? Barbell Shrugged. And they, you know what it reminds me of? There's a brand. What's that brand that was connected to UFC that first started out? Tap Out. Remember how Tap Out blew up because UFC blew up?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened, right? Tap Out was a t-shirt company, but they exploded.
Probably made millions of dollars.
Yeah, because they exploded because they attached themselves to the growing brand. So their timing was absolutely perfect, and that means a lot. In business, but I think what you guys, I think what you were saying, Justin, I think is probably the biggest one that I could.
I can't believe I didn't even think, because I was just talking to this girl yesterday about that. So what a great point that you brought.
We've gotten
up.
some good advice too.
We've gotten. I would
what's
say,
his name from? I can't even remember his name. One of the best podcast host interviewers.
Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan.
Yeah.
Oh God, the guy's just he should charge people.
Yeah, he's a master of his craft.
Teach them how to interview and podcast.
Now the irony of that is that same great advice is also who brought up that originally, the podcast.
I think it was him.
It was him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's somebody who uses an agency. Mm-hmm. You know, he's chose to go through an agency because which it makes sense.
But
because,
he's a master at podcasting.
Yeah, you know, exactly. He's mastered the interview process so well. He's different. He's different than what we're building here. We're trying to build a media company.
Different.
We're all
trying
fit
with us.
Yeah, it is different. So, but I would say he's given. I mean, we've had so much great advice. I mean, a lot of conversations with other podcasters. We've got great advice. I would say there's a lot less, bad advice that we got through people. And even the ones that I pointed out, I don't think were like,
here's some of the best
horrific. I mean, I appreciate Connor trying, but I mean, I knew that when he advised that, I'm like, okay, you don't see the vision. You don't get what we're trying to do. If that's where you're trying to point me in that direction, which is also what led me to believe that I didn't think that he would be that great of an asset with us. And so I was like, okay.
I tell you what though, here's one piece of advice that we've said many times, and it's simple. It's very simple, and I still see people doing this. And I'm telling you right now, you will fall by the wayside if you don't fix this. If your sound is shit, if it sounds like you're talking in a bathroom and there's an echo in the background, I've got buddies. I'm not going to call them out because I like these people who have podcasts in our space, good information. I listen to it, and it's like, it sounds like you're in a fucking bathroom. Yeah. All you got to do is put some blankets up on the walls, absorb the sound so it sounds better, because the space is growing so fast that we're literally 5 years away,
dude. It's like
from major production.
I tell people it's the same thing trying to get in as a TV network and then shooting in this fucking low resolution feed. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have all these channels that are shooting in high def and then you're in black and white still.
Well, look at you.
I mean, who's going to watch you? You could have the best content in the world, and you might get a little bit of an audience that will watch it in black and white still, because it's such great content. But the level of content that you have to be putting out in order to attract people to a horrible sound right now is
competition's getting better and better. It reminds me of, if you look at YouTube, 6 years ago on YouTube, you had the top fitness guys who were getting millions of views. Shitty compared to what you see now, right? Shitty quality. It was just a plain camera, the crappy sound. Dude standing in front of camera talking. It's, what's his name, Six Pack Abs or Scooby, whatever the guy's name. Millions and millions of followers. Those guys today, if they started their channels today like that,
would never get traction.
They would never get traction because YouTube is so competitive now. The podcast space is starting to get like that, and one of the easiest black and white things, and it doesn't, equipment's cheap now. You can get high fucking quality microphone equipment.
Well, almost everybody
under $1,000.
Well, almost everybody has similar or pretty similar mics. Yeah. It's what you.
It's the room.
Yeah, it's the room. It's the the foam in this room, and then like before even this room, and we had the other place was the blankets, like you said. And
in Doug's living room, he would hang out. I remember before we podcast, it would take like an hour of setup because we'd hang blankets, and I remember us being like, we'd roll our eyes like, who cares, Doug? But Doug was like, no, it's got to sound. Thank God, Doug.
No. You talk about huge paramount decisions that were made by each of us individually, and that was Doug who really would not budge on that. And if it was up to me, we would have paid no attention to that. And that was a major learning lesson, I think, for all of us. And now I believe in it so much that you're right. I'm like, it's the first thing.
Pass that on.
The two things that it's so funny you guys both picked those things, because I was literally giving podcast advice to someone yesterday, and those were the two major points I made. Was don't go skimpy on your equipment. Get yourself some nice equipment. Spend some time even if it's in your house. Make the room soundproof and make it as good as you can, so when people listen to you, it's not annoying and sounds like you're in a bathroom. And then the other advice was to her about the advertising. It's like, don't just go. Your goal should not be to make money right now. It should be to find a way to provide so much value for your audience that they want to pay you.
Truly connect with your audience.
Yes, absolutely.
So look, you can go to mindpumpfree.com and download some of our free fitness, nutrition, and health guides. I believe there's, maybe 10 on there. So again, it's mindpumpfree.com. Go check it out. Also, you can find our individual Instagram pages with our own unique content. So you can find Justin on Instagram at mindpumpjustin. Adam is at
there.
mindpumpadam, and then me I'm at mindpumpsal.
Thank you for listening to Mind Pump. If your goal is to build and shape your body, dramatically improve your health and energy, and maximize your overall performance, check out our discounted RGB Super Bundle at mindpumpmedia.com. The RGB Super Bundle includes MAPS Anabolic, MAPS Performance, and MAPS Aesthetic. 9 months of phased expert exercise programming designed by Sal, Adam, and Justin to systematically transform the way your body looks, feels, and performs. With detailed workout blueprints and over 200 videos, the RGB Super Bundle is like having Sal, Adam, and Justin as your own personal trainers, but at a fraction of the price. The RGB Super Bundle has a full 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can get it now plus other valuable free resources at mindpumpmedia.com. If you enjoy this show, please share the love by leaving us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes and by introducing Mind Pump to your friends and family. We thank you for your support, and until next time, this is Mind Pump.